Welcome to the Life at Finastra podcast. This is a podcast where we get to know the people behind Finastra. We'll be speaking to the wonderful folks that make up the global team here at Finastra about what makes them unique not just to the company, but to the world. I'm Karan, and I'm the video producer for Employer Brand, and I'll be your go-to guy for this podcast. In this episode, we'll be speaking to Reagan Carnegie, who is the Senior Director of Culture and Leadership here at Finastra. Being in the position that she's in, being the Senior Director of Culture and Leadership, it for me is an interesting position to be in because you're almost the driver of a lot of these initiatives that we have at Finastra. I'm excited for you guys to listen to this. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it and talking with Reagan. Enjoy. Welcome to the Life at Finastra podcast. Thank you so much for being with us, Reagan. Why don't you start off by telling us who Reagan is?
Who Reagan is? Okay. Should be an easy question, right?
Yeah.
Reagan is a Finastra employee for over 17 years.
Wow.
Which sometimes I don't really share that number, but I'm going to be really honest on
No,
today's
please
podcast.
do, yeah.
17 plus years. I'm born and raised in Toronto. I'm married. I have an 18-month-old son. I have a very close family. I love sports, travel. Yeah, I guess those are the highlights in a nutshell.
And you know what's interesting? I think one of the interesting things for me and why I wanted you to be on this podcast was because an organization has to be a very specific way for a person to stay at an organization for 17 years. Seeing your perspective and seeing how, from your eyes, things have changed, right? From when you first started and to where you are now. So I guess we'll get to that. But before that, I want to kind of talk a little bit about you. What is your story so far? What's led you to this point kind of today?
To being here today?
Yeah.
I think if I speak to the professional side of it, like Finastra has truly just been a journey of opportunity for continuous growth and development. Like there's no other way to describe that. Like you said, I'm an anomaly. There's not a ton of people that, are my age and have spent their career at one organization. And it's no secret that there's been times throughout those 17 years where I've had to stop and go, I don't know, is this the right company for me? Is this the right role for me? What's the next opportunity? But it's just been that. It's been every time I've hit that kind of point where you start to reevaluate and you maybe question, there's been a new opportunity, a significant change in the organization, a new journey, a new strategy, new leadership. And each of those brings kind of that reevaluation of like, okay, do I want to stay and ride this out and see what this brings? Or do I want to go somewhere else? And I think that's just it. Like I'm someone that has been open to opportunities, open to trying new things, like wanting to just learn and grow, and someone that's rode a lot of the wave with Finastra, and that's kind of it, right? It's been constantly reevaluating, but saying that I do want to be a part of this journey and see what the future holds. And
it's one thing you've just said, which is interesting to me, is when kind of when there's new leadership and that kind of thing, it almost feels like in many organizations, it becomes almost like a reset, doesn't it? Because you've got you complete different vision, you've got a different journey, you've almost started again.
Right. And
so how has that been? I mean, in terms of from where you were when you first started this organization, and we've talked about this a little bit off recording, but what are the differences that you've seen from when you first started to kind of where we are now? Because, there's been tons of not just technological advancements, right, but just processes, the way we do things as an organization, as an industry, even like what are the differences that you've seen from when you first started to kind of where we are now?
Absolutely. I mean, well, just our business in itself. I mean, when I first joined Finastra, which was formerly D&H at the time, we were a check manufacturing company that were just getting into the space of offering call centers for the banks, and you could switch your bank account from one bank to the other, and you were offered an iPad shuffle, and we did all the work behind the scenes, and we set up call centers that were helping to orchestrate that for the very first time. And then we went through several acquisitions, and we're moving away from the check business into the financial technology space, and then we became Finastra, and it's just the shift, in the products that we offer, the solutions that we provide, the strategy. That's what's been the exciting part, is it's always new learning, and it's watching how this company has evolved and changed over time. because yes, I mean, we still have our check manufacturing business.
Yes.
We still have our cornerstone businesses,
Of course.
Which is amazing. But, you know, the company had to change
Yes.
with the way times were changing. And
Absolutely.
I think that's the difference is, you know, every few years there was new leaders coming in talking about how we could continue to transform the business, be relevant to our customers, be relevant to our clients, you know, and just evolve with the way technology
That's
is
it.
because it's just such an ever-changing
Yeah.
industry that if you don't, like,
You're going to fall behind.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like then what's your story going to look like,
Right.
right? So I think that's been the exciting part. Like when I think back to when I started, like, and, you know, I used to go sit in some of our manufacturing facilities and see them, you know, make checks. And
Yeah.
now I look at where we are and who we are as an organization and how much has changed, but understanding how Cornerstone has helped to support that business and everything else. Like it's just such a crazy evolution, but it's exciting. It's an awesome journey to have been a part of.
You know, you've mentioned obviously you've you know, kind of being here kind of for those years and questioning yourself and asking those questions. Okay, well, can I see myself writing out whatever it is, right?
Yep.
So yeah, can you talk about some of the challenges? Not necessarily, it doesn't even necessarily have to be from a Finastra perspective, but just, you know, in your life, how has that changed, and how has being at Finastra changed for you from, again, when you first started to kind of where you are now?
For sure. So if I think about from a personal perspective, I mean, 17 years is a long time when you think of what has evolved in those 17 years. So full transparency, when I started my very first day at Finastra, I was still completing my postgrad in HR.
Yep.
And I convinced them to hire me and let me finish my program for the remaining 2 months that I had. And I would work 3 days a week and go to school 2 days a week.
Cool.
So what was important to me right then?
Yep.
Getting a full-time job, right? Like super important, getting my designation as a certified HR practitioner. You know, those were the things that were important. Then you get a couple years into your career and it's okay. Like I had supported contact centers and then I worked as a business partner early on. So it was working with different client groups, wanting to get exposure to different areas of the business to kind of broaden your understanding and knowledge. And, you know, things that were important at that point, like, you know, I wanted to move out. I wanted to buy a car. It was like income was important. Title was important, you know, like you wanted to kind of, you know, when you're early on in your career, you're looking to see progression and you want those opportunities to happen relatively quickly, right? So you want to gain experience, you want to get confident, you want to build new skill sets, and then you want the next step. You want them to continue offering opportunities. And when I think about that, I mean, when I joined in that first 10-year window, I think we went through like 11 acquisitions. So there kept being new opportunities, take on new client groups, take on new areas of the business, you know. We went through a really significant acquisition and they picked me up and dropped me in the new office and I knew nobody. And that, I look back and that felt like a brand new company. Although I was still with the same organization, I went to be a business partner for this new area, you know, new business that we'd acquired. Knew nobody. So it's like, it was just like starting a brand new job, you know, trying to build rapport with the business, trying to meet new people in this HR team that, you know, you haven't worked with in the past. So that was really, you know, those things were still about growth and development, but at the same time, you know, I was looking to buy my first condo. So again, you know, you're making the transition from a renter to a buyer. So again, you know, income and stability is important. So you get approved for a mortgage, you know, that I met my husband, we bought our house, same thing, you're renovating, you know, so then it's like, well, we both need to have like stable jobs if we're signing up for this mortgage, you know, like the things that go through your mind. And then I became a mom and, you know, again, things that, you know, are important to you shift again. Now, flexibility is very important to me, right? I'm one that actually really likes that we work on a global, you know, global schedule. And my team is based primarily in the UK and in Romania. So my mornings start early and, you know, sometimes that means trying to coordinate drop off and whatnot. But I know that I get dinner hour pretty much uninterrupted because my team's sleeping. Right? So flexibility with my schedule and being able to adjust as a, you know, first time mom returning to the workforce, like that was a new priority that was really, you know, important to me, and having that flexibility to work from home or work from the office. And, be where I need to be based on the needs of the job and the team and me.
Yeah.
And that's just it. I think you go through all these milestones in life, and there's new things that become important to you at different stages in your career.
Yeah.
Being a new mom coming back to work, I'm always looking to like take on more and try on new things. And don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there's also a little bit of comfort of coming back to an organization that I know.
Yeah.
And I have a reputation that I've established, and I have a team that I've worked with,
Yeah.
and there's new leaders and new people that you're meeting with, but that's a little bit of comfort. And when you're coming back from mat leave, you lack the confidence. You've been out of the field for like a year. Your mind is totally focused on being a mom, and now all of a sudden you're trying to figure out how to do that and also go back to work. Well, it was really nice to come back to something that was familiar, and feel supported and have a network of team members and business colleagues that are all, wanting to support you in that transition. And you wouldn't have that if you were maybe starting a brand new job, because they don't know that. They don't know you.
Yep.
So I just think it's, as much as it's been about that, there's been so many times throughout my career that different priorities play a key factor. And it's just kind of, the business has evolved in that way. We didn't work in the same flexible manner as we do post-COVID.
Yep.
So, it's just been interesting that each time I hit where these things are really important, or my needs have potentially changed, the organization has evolved as well. And it's still just been a match, which is pretty awesome.
And I want to come back to kind of your, that you mentioned the transition from mat leave to kind of come back to work. So I want to come back to that a bit later. But first I want to kind of talk about, so let's talk about your role. What is it that you do, and I guess the impact that has on the organization?
So my portfolio is referred to as culture and leadership. So culture is a big bucket when you think about Finastra, right? It's really easy to go, okay, what does that mean? So at the core of it, it's the values and behaviors that, we stand for as an organization and that each of the employees identify. So how do we embed those into the organization so that we're living and breathing the values and the behaviors that are important to us? And it's no secret we've been on a journey of what our behaviors look like at Finastra since coming to be. So culture is all about how it feels when you're working at Finastra, right? So the other things that fall into that space are recognition, employee recognition. How do employees feel value in the work that they're doing and they're contributing to the organization? Our listening channels as it relates to employee engagement. So what makes Finastra great? Where are there opportunities to improve? What are the things that we continue to do? So within my space is also our listening channels. So whether that be our monthly pulse or our FinSight survey that we do once a year that's live right now, onboarding exit surveys, event-based surveys, just any channel that we're using to leverage insights from our employees and hear what they love about Finastra, what makes Finastra unique and we should continue doing, and where there's opportunities for us to continuing improving. And then that feeds into the leadership side. So within my team, we support leadership right from, our frontline leaders, anyone that leads a team, one person or multiple, right up to our senior leadership. So, we offer programs like our FinLead program, which is about developing our frontline leaders and equipping them with the leadership capabilities and skills that make them a great leader and, help to shape the employee experience. We know that 70 to 80% of the employee experience is influenced by someone's people leader. So we have a big job in making sure that people leaders are set up for success to lead in the best way possible, because they're going to influence our talent staying at the organization or leaving the organization. And then it also means working with our senior leadership team. So we do a lot of work with our SLT, our senior leadership team, with programs like our Lead the Way program. So how are we, engaging and inspiring and developing our senior leaders so that they're giving the organization the lift that we need to move forward. So that's kind of a broad view of the space that we play in.
It used to be culture that used to be that, does the place have a foosball table? Does it have a beanbag chair, right? Does it have a breakout space where I can chill out and just do whatever? I think it's expanded, and I can talk about this all day long, but culture to me is so much more than that, and you've kind of described that in a nutshell. But can you talk about the challenges within the culture space, right? Because trying to make sure, and this is an impossible task, trying to make sure everybody's happy is such a huge challenge, right? And to almost spearhead that part of a business can be so overwhelming. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you have to go through when it comes to stuff like culture and, quote unquote, keeping people happy and that kind of stuff?
Sure. I think it's what's the best way to say this? To your point, like everybody has to make a decision for themselves about whether Finastra is the organization for them, right? So as an organization, we need to establish the leadership team and set forward what are the values and the behaviors that we stand for, what's important to us as an organization or unique to us as an organization. And then it's, you want employees to identify with them. I mean, I think when anyone goes out, it's like, you need to feel that connection. So if the values and the behaviors that are expected of employees and managers and whatnot, if those don't relate or resonate with you, it's not going to be a fit, right? So that's the first part is like, I think when anyone goes out and looks for an organization, you kind of go, okay, yeah, that's important to me too. So that's a fit. And then it's about creating, programs and opportunities that continue to excite you and attract you and re-attract you to the organization. It's continuing to do the great things that, people love and appreciate. And, flexibility is one of the biggest things we hear about is people really value the flexibility that Finastra has, the focus on well-being and digital detox. We just had our OOO day, like those opportunities where it's like step back, relax, get, rejuvenate.
Yeah. And I think what you said as well is does the company you're working for resonate with your values? And I think that was the biggest thing, at least for me, when I joined the company, that's the biggest thing that I looked at.
And I think because we're a global organization, that's a unique part to our culture that is another overlay. So like every time you think of something, you have to think about, okay, well, how does this translate, for our employees in APAC versus Europe versus North America? And, we think about, we've learned so much in that space. I remember when I, early on working with Finastra, and I've always been responsible for the employee engagement space. And, we were coming up with great ideas on how we could drive engagement within different locations. Well, we got our site leaders together at the time, and you're having these conversations around what different locations are doing. And it just became so apparent that, what someone was doing in one site was not going to translate well into another location. What works in all of our, like it's not a one size fits all. So I think the other thing that makes us so unique is that we need to look at everything, with the holistic enterprise lens, but also then overlay that local dynamic and think about, okay, what is potentially really important in our India locations versus our Europe locations versus North America. And I think we've had to learn and evolve with that so much too.
So I want to do a backward segue, going from campus to corporate, because this is something that you mentioned when we first talked. But also, yes, that transition from going from nappies to emails, right? Yep. So can you start with the campus to corporate, because I'm so interested in that. Can you tell me how that looks for a young Reagan going from, not to say you're not young now, of course you're young.
Good cover.
A student going into a good corporate life, right? Like what did that look like, and how did that even feel?
You know what, I think at that time, I mean, I'd gone through my schooling and, you have this like academic background and you have like confidence in some of the skills that are very transferable. So like communication skills has always been a strength. And so, okay, I can play up to that, or like, organization skills. Like you take the things that you learned in school and you think about how you can apply them in the job. But you definitely, or I remember definitely having this like lack of confidence.
Yes.
Like you almost feel like, if I sound silly, but it's a bit of imposter syndrome a little 100%. Bit at the beginning, because you're like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I mean, I was incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by leaders in the team and colleagues in the team that were super supportive of my onboarding and supporting that kind of like accelerated integration. And you have those trusted people that you can bounce ideas off of, and it's like you sit in a meeting and they're like, hey, here's the problem, here's this and that. And it's, I think at the beginning, it's learning that you don't have to have the answer right away, that you can like go back and then you can think it through and you can circle back with something, because at the beginning you really don't know. You have recommendations, and I remember you'd be nervous to say this was your first job, or nervous to say that you'd never done that before, because you don't want the business not to trust your judgment. So there's definitely a bit of like imposter syndrome, and then you quickly start to gain experience and you quickly start to build your trust in yourself, and you build a trusted network that you can bounce ideas off of. Like I can list the names of people that I would like call a friend and go, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I think.
Yeah.
Can I get your perspective? Can I get your feedback? And that starts to allow you to feel like you can make informed decisions. And then quickly, you know, a year or two passes and, you know, you're always faced with a new problem that you've never encountered. But the ones that are recurring, you feel good about, right? And it's funny you say that, because I would say that's the exact same feeling I had coming back. It's like you have, you know, I mean, I'd left before maternity leave and I'd worked here for quite some time. I had I knew a lot of the leaders, I knew a lot of the team members and colleagues. And then, you know, I came back and, you know, Helen had joined the team. So it's a new chief people officer. Claire, I was reporting into Claire when I came back, and, you know, we had been colleagues for, you know, before I went off on maternity leave. Two of my team members had left since I'd been on maternity leave. We had new members of the executive team. So you start with that whole, I don't know the players as well again, right? So they don't know who I am.
You're going to restart.
You know, I don't know who they are. We'd gone through a lot of change in the organization with the pivot. So it's like you're trying to digest the information and get up to speed while you're also trying to make decisions. Yeah, you do. You don't trust your confidence, right? I literally, before I came back, was like, what if I don't remember what to do? Or what if I don't know how to... And you fall back to the things you're comfortable with. I've led a team for some time. So I was like, okay, I'm comfortable leading my team and supporting them. And, you know, we'll figure out what's on their lists and their priorities, and we can work through that. But you do question for yourself.
100%.
If you're going to know what to do. Maybe that's something I shouldn't be broadcasting, but I'm going to bet that every other new parent that's coming back after some type of leave, or even employees that have been off on a medical leave or anything else like that, anytime you step away and work is not your priority, and then you come back, there's this confidence gap. And I think what I was so comforted by, and I mean, the first few weeks back, you're just super emotional too. You're so tired. And you're not getting as much time with your little one as you're used to. But I've always been someone that knew I would come back to work too, because I'm I love what I do. I am career driven. So it's like a guilty battle you have. You're like, okay, well, I really am enjoying working and I'm loving what I'm doing. But I feel bad because I'm not with my son.
But I think that's the biggest difference, isn't it? I think it's if you feel like you are supported and you feel like you belong in so many different ways, I feel like that makes so much of a difference, and you don't feel like you have to hide anything because you know you're going to get the support.
Right. You know, I think that's what anyone needs to find in it. That's what you need to find in the organization that's a fit for you, is you feel like you belong. You feel like you bring as much as you're comfortable sharing, because you know, some aren't as much of an open book.
Of course.
Some don't want to share, you know, that much of their private life, and that's completely acceptable too, right? But it's about finding an organization where you feel comforted, you know, supported. You can be your whole self, and you can get the best of both worlds. You can 100%. Continue to live the personal life that you want to, but you're living your best life at Finastra.
Absolutely. Okay. What would you say is the unique selling point about Finastra?
If I think of a big scale organization where your people team is 300 people and your reward team is 60 people, your role is very set in terms of what you're focused on, what's within your spans and control, you know, your realm of responsibility. What I love about Finastra is that we're a global organization. You know, we have an ambitious strategy, and then because we're not this huge organization of 50, 60, 70,000 people, you know, in most of our roles, we have the opportunity to have influence and impact. And I think that's the thing. You can actually change the way things are done. You can get involved in things. You can help to shape. If you love culture, you can get involved in
everybody
ESG,
has a hand in it.
ERGs, you know, site leadership, you know, there's wellness, you know, our resilience champions. There's so many things outside of your role that you can get involved in. But then within your role, there's always projects and opportunities, and you can put your hand up and you can get involved in something. So I think I love just that it's not so rigid and structured that your role is so controlled.
Okay. Medium quick-fire questions here.
All right.
So what advice would you give to a young you?
Don't say no to something just because you're afraid.
Nice.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think I don't think I did.
Yeah.
There's probably a few times I was hesitant because I was afraid, but you can miss out on some awesome opportunities or playing in a space that you don't even know you'd love and be really good at just because you're scared.
I like that. One thing you knew before embarking on this crazy journey?
I think I wish I'd known before I joined that, like, I don't know that I ever thought I'd be here this long.
Yeah.
And I think I wish maybe early on in my career I'd kind of, thought that it was okay. Because I think it's like a bit of a misconception with I'm still loving what I'm doing. I'm still being challenged. I'm still learning new things. I'm learning from some incredible leaders. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be totally driven by that common concept that you're going to change careers every 2 to 3 years and change organizations.
Okay, and the last question. So if there's one thing that people should take away about you, what would that be?
I love working with people.
Yep.
I love meeting new people. I love tackling problems, challenges, and like thinking about ways we continue to make this organization better.
Reagan Carnegie, thank you so much for being on the Life at Finastra podcast. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad we did this. I'm glad I did it in person as well, because sometimes it can be very tiring sitting behind a desk at home by yourself.
Way more fun to get in and see each other face to face.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the episode that we had with Reagan. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to that episode. It's been a pleasure speaking with Reagan, and it's been a pleasure just listening to her story and just the experience that she's had that spans 17 years. And for me, that's fascinating. It's been a pleasure being your host, and I can't wait for you guys to hear the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Life at Finastra podcast, and I'll see you next time.